What's up, family? I'm Slink Johnson, welcoming you to a very special edition of Tokin Tuesday, shot entirely here at California Cannabis, baby. And I'm here today with a very, very influential man, a man instrumental in you being able to go to a dispensary and smoke you some weed and without the fear of the cops from running your ass down. This man here is Mr. Virgil Grant. Virgil, how you doing, player?
Oh, man, it's all good. Everything good.
Hey, man, right on, man. Such a pleasure to be here, man, with you. And, you know, you're such an interesting dude. You're such an interesting dude. So low-key and understated, yet interesting nonetheless. As I become acquainted with you, you know what I'm saying, I find out so many interesting facts about you, and I never really understood how instrumental you are in the cannabis, I'll just say the status of cannabis and its legality here in LA today. So with that, I want to ask first, man, who is Virgil Grant?
I'm just a regular old dude, you know, that come from the same streets everybody else come from. I mean
those streets, what streets are those?
Compton, you know what I'm saying, in the house. But you know, I'm just a regular old dude who found his way in something that I enjoy doing. And I'm good at what I do. I love what I do. And so it just comes out in the work that I put in. I just understood how to navigate through the world that I was living in and working in. And this became all cannabis.
Okay, that world being the cannabis world. Now, a lot of people who just enjoy cannabis and don't necessarily know the intricacies and the legalities and the things involved in getting them to you, getting the cannabis to the people. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that. So a lot of us think like, yo, you start selling weed and you make enough weed to get, now we're gonna get a dispensary. Mm-hmm. Or you sell enough money now, we're gonna get a storefront. Mm-hmm. Like that might be the motto for a lot of youngsters, man, but you know, this shit is deep, man. So tell, when and how did you get involved in dealing with cannabis?
So I started out just like majority of the people that got into the cannabis industry early on. We were on the other side of the game. We were in the illicit market. We were in the unregulated market, which we all call the illicit market. I don't use the term black market because I don't like to associate black with negative. Right. So I use the illicit market. And I came from the illicit market. So I was on the streets hustling.
Very illicit.
Yeah, very illicit. I was in the thick of it all. And so that's how I really started in this industry. And when the opportunity presented itself to transition into the legal market, I took advantage of it.
Now, when you say illicit, you know, again, you just mentioned it, but I don't think people really understand the depth of trouble you could have gotten in, you know, with some cannabis 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like when you first started 30, 40 years ago, however X amount of years, mm-hmm. You know, they'll understand, you know, this is a serious thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it was prison time. It was, you know, you had a couple of nickel bags on you, or a couple of dime bags, or a couple of 20 sacks or 50 sacks, or whatever you was selling back then. You was talking jail time. And if you lived in the communities or grew up in the communities I was in, you was talking prison time, you know?
Absolutely. In which that, you know, something that you definitely had, that was a bridge that you had to cross as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, you know, Virgil Grant goes from, I mean, what separated you from the rest of the dealers in the street? You know, what made you rise to such prominence? Because again, your road goes through a whole bunch of different doorways and things of that nature, and it's a whole lot. So what made you different? What made you different?
I would have to say I didn't get into selling weed for the money. So that's what separated me from everybody out there in the neighborhoods, because everybody sold weed to make money. But you got to keep in mind, I came up in the crack era. So the choice of drug to sell was crack cocaine, or PCP, which is Sherman. So those were the drugs that people were selling back when I was coming up. They looked at weed as, oh, it ain't no money in weed. But like I say, I wasn't there for the money, so I didn't care. That wasn't my whole reason on why I got involved in cannabis and marijuana and weed. I got into it because once I became familiar with it, I just took a love to it.
Okay, and the love is a beautiful thing, man. But in the 80s, when the crack era was at its height, Cass was making so much money. What made Virgil Grant hold steadfast to marijuana and not dabble in, take the crack route?
I saw what crack cocaine did to our community. I saw what it did to a lot of people within the communities that I came in, and I couldn't be a part of putting that poison on the streets or feeding it to my peoples. I just couldn't. Cannabis brought goodness and brought just a whole different vibe. The people that dealt in cannabis, whole different vibe. The people that bought cannabis, whole different vibe. Just the whole aura around cannabis was different. And so that's why I gravitated. It was just goodness that came from it, as the Rastaman say, healing of the nation.
Now, in your quest to heal the nation, with marijuana being a quote-unquote illicit item or dealing with an illicit activity at that time, I'm sure all the illicit activities was around each other. So you came up in the same era with some of our legendary drug dealing greats here in LA.
The Rick Rosses, even up in the era of the Meaches, that was going in the other people in other states that was doing what they were doing. So my goal was to become once I begin to dabble in what I consider take over, that was my goal in cannabis, to be the #1 cannabis distributor in my region. And that was my goal at that point. I was that fascinated about selling cannabis that I wanted, if there was any weed sold on the streets, Compton, Watts, East Side LA, I wanted to make sure, West Side, I wanted to make sure that I had a hand in it some kind of way.
Wow, you sound like you had your mind on, marijuana as a corporate venture way before, people could even imagine the possibility of it becoming legal and becoming, what it is today. You had your mind set on corporate aspirations as far as marijuana long before people even imagined it coming into fruition. Mm-hmm. How hard did you fight? Like, did you really understand the type of fight that you were going to have to get it that way? And did you really believe early on at the beginning that you would be instrumental in making cannabis something that anybody can enjoy today?
That's a great question. I knew that it was going to be a fight and a battle for legalization of cannabis, and I always have to be very clear. I wasn't the only one that did it, and there were people before me. So your Jack Herreras, your Eddie Lepps, your Ed Rosenthals, there were people out there doing this long before me. The Don Duncans, the Jay Coutis, the Sarah Armstrongs, the Yami Bolanoses. These were soldiers in there just like me. So I'm not sitting here. I don't want y'all to get the misconception that I was the only one fighting this fight. No, I was out there in the trenches with everybody else. The torch was passed on to people like me from the people, what I call the forefathers in the industry. So I knew, watching their journey, it was going to be a very difficult journey when the torch was passed to us. We were going to have to take it to that next level. See, the people before us that was fighting just wanted the opportunity to consume cannabis. So that was a whole different fight. They just wanted to be able to smoke cannabis whenever they want to, however they wanted to. When we came along to take cannabis and weed to a different level. We not only wanted people to have safe access to it, but we wanted to be able to provide that safe access. that lit environment or what you call the retail today. So that's the fight that we took on, which was a lot more aggressive.
Yeah, my stomach growling like a motherfucker. Pardon me if you hear, but don't worry about it. I ain't eating nothing but a cheddar words this morning, but I'm gonna eat later on. Let's move right along. We moving right along. I'm all over the place here, Virgil, because you such an interesting guy. This dynamic again. You know, I'm not the best interviewer. However, you know, I'm sitting here with an interesting guy, Virgil Grant, the first black owner, the first black dispensary owner in the legal sense. Like here in LA, there are a lot of dispensaries, a lot of quote unquote dispensaries. A lot of these places don't even have paperwork. You know what I'm saying? And again, to the county's benefit or detriment, I don't know, but it's thanks to cats like Virgil that make cannabis legal enough where cops ain't even tripping. They don't even know who to hit no more because it's legal now, and they don't even bother. You know, in my own personal opinion. Now, which leads me to ask you though too, because I'm all over the place, Virgil.
It's all good.
When did you open your first dispensary, and what was that feeling like? Did you feel any doubt or anxiety as this thing was unfolding? Like, damn, this shit is really happening. But did you ever feel like, damn, this shit gonna come crashing down because it's too good to be true?
You know, it's funny that you asked that because there was a lot of apprehension opening up my first dispensary. And I opened it up in 2004. 1321 East Compton Boulevard. I was the only one in the city of Compton ever legal running a dispensary. I was licensed to run that dispensary in the city of Compton. So there was a lot of apprehension in the beginning because I'm now taking my money, my hustle money that I acquired, and I'm getting ready to invest it into this legal business, and I don't have a clue how it's gonna go. So I went in with the mindset of I'm gonna make it work. A lot of apprehension, a lot of nervousness, a lot of uncertainty, but once I got in, I was all in.
You know what, Virgil? You know, based on our conversations earlier in the past, you know, again, I keep pointing to how you're a fascinating person because a lot of people don't understand coming from the climate that you come from, Compton, selling weed, which is an illicit activity, you know, but Virgil, you always kind of kept your nose clean because, you know, one thing that set you apart is you weren't a gangbanger.
Mm-hmm.
And how much did you think that helped you traverse and be you know, not necessarily, you know, you were known for what you're known for, cannabis, not being known for crime, murder, gangbanging. How much did you think that helped you and hindered you on your journey to making cannabis legal and making the industry for yourself?
Well, because I evolved out of my dad's liquor stores that I ran in the city of Compton for him, and we had 5 to 6 liquor stores in the city of Compton. And they were all over Compton in different neighborhoods and different sides of Compton. So that got me familiarized with all sides of town. Because I didn't gangbang, I could, you know, of course I had a pass in everybody's hood. Mm-hmm. So I could go anywhere I want to because I wasn't flagging any color, right? Everybody knew me as that so-called righteous brother, that good brother that, you know, I always was trying to tell people about, you know, the cats in the streets, about, you know, black on black crime and, you know, how they hurting and harming the community. I used to talk to some of the dope dealers about, you know, what they was pushing in the community, but, you know, they be, you know, all of them be all a little Farrakhan. We don't want to hear that, but you know how it is when you're in the hood. So people saw me in that light. So to be able to go into anybody's hood and set up shop was a softer sell. You see what I'm saying? So I wasn't a threat.
So what I should say is this: that you dealt with people all over Compton. All over Compton, and being a businessman, you dealt with people. Do you think that helped you deal with more? That equipped you better to deal with bureaucrats, politicians, and things like that? Because you had a lot of that as well. I mean, as we spoke earlier, you went from the streets to the boardroom. Like, so you think that that experience in the street gave you the very equipment you need to deal with bureaucrats and politicians?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a great analogy, of course. That equipped me running my dad's business, being in the streets, being able to navigate through different neighborhoods, being able to navigate through different levels of people in the city, working class people, professionals, business owners, as well as cats in the streets selling drugs and gangbanging. I was able to communicate and navigate through all of those lines and still be respected on all levels. That afforded me, because in order to get my shop in Compton, I had to, I approached the city attorney at that time that was in the city of Compton. So there had to be some sense of diplomacy and a level of I guess you would say, education to be able to go speak to a politician or to elected official or appointed official to be able to, I guess, get done what I needed to get done.
Diplomacy. Some of you see it right here. Some of you niggas need to learn diplomacy. You know what I mean? Virgil, man. Again, man, it's very, very. You know, from the seed to the sale. That's something that stuck to me that we talked about earlier, and I don't think that enough people understand how well-rounded and how all over the cannabis industry you are. Again, from seed to sale. Like, a lot of people now are buying cannabis from dispensaries that's actually been white labeled. His definition, white label, right here.
Yeah.
Now, but not you.
No.
Not Virgil. Not Virgil Grant. Explain seed to sale to me.
So seed to sale basically is when you start from either a seedling or a clone and you stick it in the ground and cultivate it, you harvest it, you package it, and then you sell it. That's seed to sale. That's what I do. I have a 120-acre farm in southern Humboldt, and I have a grow here in the facility that Soto facility, 1601 South Soto Street. So a lot of my product that I receive and that I get, and I have manufacturing, is all right here in-house. Now, because we're in the city of Los Angeles, and we service so many people, from patients to customers that consume cannabis in the city of LA, the fourth largest financial power in the world, I can never grow enough cannabis to supply my people. So I do have to outsource a small portion of my cannabis. But the overwhelming majority of my cannabis that's sold is definitely seed to sale.
Absolutely. And that's actually a great thing that you can't keep up with demand. It's great for businesses. You got to actually outsource. So that's actually a great thing. But I'm most proud of the fact that, again, a lot of this stuff is coming straight from you. So, you got quality, you stand behind your products and things of that nature. And it's clear that you love the industry. It's clear that you love cannabis. Now I want to know, what was the motivation for you to become an activist, bro? Like, again, it ain't the money. You love what you do, but you took it a step further and became an activist, not just a successful businessman, but an activist. What motivated you to do that, brother?
Somewhere along the way, I understood about being a part of the process, right? If I felt if I wasn't a part of the process, then I couldn't affect the change of the process. So I had to be a part of the process, right? If I just sit back, and this is what I need everyone to understand. You could sit back and let somebody create and make laws for you, and then you can't cry or complain about it. You get what you got. That's because you allowed it to happen. One thing my dad used to say, either you allowed it to happen or you did it to yourself. You can figure out which one you are. But I was not about to sit back and remain silent to something. It was something, it's a quote from Martin Luther King that says that Our lives begin to end when we remain silent about the things that matter. And that stuck with me. Our lives begin to end when we remain silent about the things that matter. Cannabis mattered to me. Weed mattered to me back then. I didn't want somebody dictating how cannabis was going to go without me having a say so in it. Me being, if this the industry I made a commitment to, that I say I love and I want to be a part of for the rest of my life, then I got to be a part of the process. And so my goal was to learn from those that came before me, how they navigated through changing laws, making laws, creating laws, and changing that process in the way cannabis was going to move. I made it at that point my commitment to become an activist and be a part of that changing process.
You know, Virgil, and you've had your share of ups and downs and injustices involved in the cannabis. Like, a lot of people will look at you and say, wow, successful businessman, you know, on 3 brick and mortar dispensaries, you know, several business endeavors you're taking up. They'll never really understand, you know, the turmoil you went through. Like, again, you've had your share of run-ins with the cops and, you know, crazy things, arrests and things of that nature. You care to expound upon that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always say that, you know, now everybody wants to get into it because it's safe. I was in it when it was unsafe. I was in it when the federal raids was going down here in LA. I was in it before that when, you know, if you got pulled over and you had weed in the car, you was going straight to jail. Don't pass go. You wasn't getting that 200. You was going,
they taking your ass straight. Hey, look, I remember for a nickel for just a little bit of weed, I'm sorry, they would take your ass straight to jail.
Yeah, you know, and so you got that 200 when you got out. Remember that little gate money that you used to get? Y'all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, it was very difficult. I was raided twice by the feds. I went to prison for 2 nickel bags of weed. 2 years in prison for 2 nickel bags of weed.
Oh man! Now run me down on that. For 2 nickel bags of weed at the time was probably what, a gram and a half, maybe 2 grams. How much was a nickel then? A little bit of nothing.
I don't even know. I didn't even sell nickel bags. It wasn't even my nickel bag of weed that I went to jail for. So yeah, 2 nickel bags of weed. I got caught up in what they call a joint suspension. And so basically what it is, instead of giving me 2 years in prison, they said, we're going to give you 3 years probation, and you sign this. We're not going to send you to jail, but you're going to be on probation for 3 years. But that 2 years is hanging over your head.
So it's like they giving you 2 years in prison on layaway, and you got 3 years to pay it off.
3 years to pay it off.
So if you miss a payment by going to jail or getting pulled over by the cops within 3 years. Wow.
So I'm living at that time on the east side, and how am I not gonna come in? I'm a young black man in my fresh 20s. How am I not going to come in contact with the police at some point in time within 3 years?
Yeah. It's impossible. It's impossible. Any young black man that lives south of Wilshire, even today, you gonna run into the police, so they gonna run into your ass. So it's definitely a plan. It was definitely a plot. It was definitely a trap, and they knew what they were doing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so Virgil, like that, and it don't stop there, because we talk, brother. You told me about some crazy times in the 80s. I'm talking about that boy 50 Cent could take your story and make a hit out that thing or something. You know what I'm saying? Because it was some crazy things you dealt with. Like, again, we spoke about some words that were foreign to me, and I want you to tell me, and I want you to tell your people about who is Camp and Met. Like, please explain that to me, bro.
So Camp are government-funded organizations, and CAMP, the acronym is CAMP, for Campaign Against Marijuana Planting. So these were how the government attacked growers. And then you got MET, which is Marijuana Eradication Team.
Wait a minute, let me just real quick. So you say CAMP, Campaign Against Marijuana Planting. So wait a minute. you wasn't planting weed in Compton, right?
No.
Wow. So you not only were involved in hand-to-hand sales or getting it out there, you was with the planters and growers and
I
things
was with the growers up in Humboldt.
Wow, what was that like? I mean, dealing with the growers and like things I see on TV are just like crazy. They like out in the woods and cops, trying. What is that like, bro?
Oh man, it was my first experience in Humboldt was very different. When I say a totally different world than LA, but California is a huge state. And so you got to understand, we talking a whole 12-hour drive away from Compton. You know what I'm saying? And it was a whole different world for me being in the backwoods, and you in a place you unfamiliar with. You don't have the topography is different. The terrain is different. You don't, it's different out there. So you just nervous, like I'm in no man's land. They could dig a ditch and throw me in it.
A kid from East Side Compton, a kid from Compton, California, moved his way up to the ranks, and now it's damn near like you in the jungles of Humboldt dealing with these crazy acts. Because again, there, just like you said, the topography is different and the landscape, all that stuff is different. The cops are different. So you're no longer dealing with LASD and Compton Police Department. You're dealing with camp,
which is the government, which is the federal government. So let me give you something that you can grasp hold to. Whenever you used to watch those shows about the cocaine dealers going to Nicaragua and all those other places, that Medellin, it was just like that. It's like in the backwoods, it's in no man's land. And who governs that? The people that live there.
Oh, so Frank Lucas, an American gangster, went over there to Asia to get that heroin to talk to. Concept. You had to go to Humboldt in the middle of the woods to talk to the man.
Talk to the man.
Wow.
And that was a place a lot of people wouldn't and didn't travel, because it's not like you could just get to somebody's front door like that. To get to somebody's front door off of a road, and the road is already a backwoods road, but to get to somebody's front door, you still got another 5 to 10 minute drive to get there. Jumped in it when it was safe. They wasn't in it when it was unsafe.
Man.
When the feds was looming around, when the raids was popping off, when it was really going on, that's what makes a difference, because you got a player that's been through the illicit market, to the legal market, to the federal raids, to the federal convictions, to the in prison, to the out of prison, to the back on, to the legislation part. So creating legislation, getting legislation passed in the city of LA. How many people can speak on those levels that actually been there, can say, oh, I've been there and done that? Maybe they did activism, but they didn't do
or
and operate.
2 out of the 5. Maybe they did 2 out of the 5, but not the 5.
You went through the gamut as far as this cannabis shit. If anybody, if anybody's done it, you've done it. From hand-to-hand sales, running from cops in Compton, to running from federal helicopters, to going into the boardrooms as a legitimate businessman and looking these bureaucrats that try to take you down. Man, that's just some crazy shit, man. So anyway, back to the helicopter, man. I want you to tell them about the helicopter shit.
So I'm on a top of a mountain, on a ridge of a mountain, and we got the suitcases and everything, the weed from my guy that I go see. Back in the day, he was the dude I bought weed from. So of course we in just the middle of the woods, and all of a sudden we just out talking, we chopping it up. I done already, gave them the money. They already gave me the weed. We getting ready to load everything up, and I'm looking at the pounds and everything, checking them out, and all of a sudden somebody pauses, and there's a couple of us out there. Say, you hear that? And we pause for a minute. We hear that boom, 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 and we start listening, and it start getting closer and closer. So they recognize it. I'm green and new to this, so this is my first experience, and they saying, I'm like, what's that? They like, man, them is helicopters. They said, man, that's Camp Met, man, coming in. So next thing you know, we look, it's getting stronger and stronger. We look above the trees, and they coming over the ridge of the mountain. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting caught in the raid. You could see them there hanging out the helicopter with their little M16s or whatever they carried, and the rope hanging down, waiting for them to
I'll slide down that motherfucker.
to come up out that rope. They was like, hey man, pack them suitcases up. So we start packing the suitcases up, locking them down. I get them up under my arm, and they say, let's go. So everybody hopping on their quads and their motorcycles, and we ducking up under the trees, because that's our cover out there.
Right.
So we duck up under the trees, we stash the suitcases, and we hop on the quad, and they know how to navigate through the cover, which is the trees. So we navigating through the woods, and we get out of Dodge and just stay gone for a minute until they finally leave, and then we come back. I grab my suitcases, throw them in the trunk of the car, and my ass is heading back home. I'm like, let me get the hell up out of here.
Now that shit crazy, man, and to think that, you know, again, I want people to understand this about you, Virgil, is that you love what you do, you love the culture. Again, you can't just look at this guy and say, okay, this dude's some rich ass dispensary owner, and not understand this guy's backstory. Again, from seed to sale. And I think that's the best way that's the best way I would describe you and your career. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Again, a person that's run the gamut, you know, dealt with growers, dealt with clients, dealt with cops, and dealt with politicians. Mm-hmm. Now, in dealing with the police throughout your your dealings and you know, in and out of legal trouble, mm-hmm. and in and out of courtrooms all your life, mm-hmm. involved in this. Yeah. How have you met people that once tried to take you down and then ended up becoming an ally at all?
Yeah, there were a lot of politicians that didn't want to see cannabis successful, and then a lot of them flipped over into trying to help. There are law enforcers who have now retired, because we have to retire close to the retirement age right now. At least I am. Close to the retirement age. But it's a lot of cats that was older than me that was law enforcement, now wanting to do something with the cannabis industry. Oh, I'm retired now. We could do security, or I'm retired now. How do I invest in the industry? So yes, there are a lot of people who were against cannabis and now looking at this as a way to make them some extra retirement money.
Virgil, when did you see the green rush coming?
Oh shoot, I saw it long before anybody thought about the green rush. So we talking back in the 80s, man. I was, when I bought my first sack, $175 for a quarter ounce of weed.
A quarter ounce. That's 7 grams.
Yeah, for $175 back then. That was back when ounces was costing $475, $500. You flip it for about $600. You know.
And again, what kind of weed was that?
Oh, that was the chronic. You know what I'm saying? That's that's back in the day what we call it, the chronic. Y'all know what the Dr. Dre album was written on, the Chronic album? Oh, it was the Crondon. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That's what we call it. That's some old school stuff.
Yes. So, you know, $175 an ounce. You bought your first quarter. You bought your first quarter ounce for $175 and never looked back.
Never looked back.
At what point at the beginning of your journey did you say, hey, this is what I want my life's work to be?
After I sold that quarter ounce, that $175 quarter ounce, I looked at it and never looked back. You know, I was in college at the time, going to school. I was in my last semester of college. Last semester of college, and I was in my abnormal psychology class. I was working at the liquor store and I was selling weed at the same time. So I had a job and a hustle. And going to college, and I was running track. I was on a scholarship at that time. Yeah, so you know, I juggled a lot of worlds in my life, navigating through college, navigating through the liquor store, navigating through the streets. So I was already going through my training ground of preparing to be able to deal with all facets of life. Sitting in my abnormal psychology class, was, kind of in the days a professor was in there. He was teaching, and then I used it like Charlie Brown. And yeah, it was one of them things. And then I just kind of snapped out of it, and I picked up my backpack and threw it on my shoulder, and I walked out of class never to return. And that was my commitment to the cannabis industry, walking out of class.
And speaking of commitment, something I don't think a lot of people understand, nor is commitment appreciated how it should be. Your commitment to the game has been more than known and more than magnified based on what you have brought to life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. However, there are a lot of people that are cashing in on a lot of, your blood, sweat, and tears. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people jumping in just to get rich now that it's safe. How do you feel about, how do you feel about those type of people, and what do you think they need to do to, better legitimize themselves or to be better in tune with the business or be successful cannabis merchants?
That's a very great question, but also a tough question. I'm not mad at the people that want to come benefit from the program that a lot of people paid away for. What I don't like is those that come into the industry and then stick their chests out like they did something. Like, no, you didn't do anything except for take up an opportunity that was afforded to you off of the backs of people like myself. Now, there's a whole bunch of names I can run you a list of that we locked arms when the feds was raiding stores. A whole list of owners that I could talk about that gave up quarter pounds of weed to the store that got raided on the other side of town.
Wait. So owners came together. If someone would get raided, owners would come together like a community.
Yeah, we came together. And if you got raided, and we know you got raided, we'll send our employees out there to help you clean up your shop if they broke glass, if they tore your store up, and help try to get it back together. We would also send them with a quarter pound of weed, and each owner would donate a quarter pound of weed to that store so that store would have product to reopen the very next day and sell, so we could keep going. We were a community back then of owners and operators who respected each other's struggle because we were all in the struggle together. So we were on a whole different level of where these people are today. That people like us in the trenches getting raided and then straightening our shops up to reopen the very next day. You have to understand the mindset of an individual who just got raided by the feds, who now got to go back into that same shop and reopen it up and stand strong for the next day, not knowing when the next raid is going to come. So there was a lot of fear that we operated under. And then the shops that were around them that didn't get raided, these owners are opening up their doors wondering, is this going to be my day?
Right.
Is the day going to be my day to get raided? And until you've been through stuff like that to understand what we've been through to afford not just people in LA and California, but we afforded the whole country.
Absolutely.
You got to understand, LA was the ground zero for the medical marijuana fight. If we'd have lost, Denver wouldn't have tried it. They said, oh no, California got their head knocked off. We not doing that. And no other state would have tried it. But the success that came out of the activism within Los Angeles, it definitely sparked the whole country now to create some form of a cannabis law, be it medical or be it adult use or what they call recreational.
Man.
So when you talk about those owners that come in, y'all need to know whose backs y'all or shoulders y'all standing on to make it happen. Don't front like y'all did this and y'all came into the industry last week opening up shops or buying shops from somebody 2 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. You ain't grown a plant, but somebody else did, and you fronting like it's your product. You know, all that stuff, man, that got to stop.
So a lot of these dudes just got the money and or the name or notoriety, and they haven't done any of the legwork, any of the hard work that is taken. Again, they weren't doing it while it was safe. I mean, they weren't doing it until it got safe, which Again, I want to ask you, man, when you were trying to get your equitable share of the Green Rush, what was some of your biggest obstacles? Again, some of these big obstacles that, current or new dispensary owners or new people dealing with cannabis didn't have to deal with. What are some of your biggest obstacles?
One was access to capital. That's always going to be, and when I say access to capital, real money. You know what I'm saying? I was fortunate enough to grow within 1 year from 1 shop to 6 shops before the federal raids. So I was kind of capital. I was pretty
getting
strong.
Your money.
I was strong capital wise.
That nigga was getting his money. You was getting your money. I went from 1 store to 6 of the year. I was look at the nigga hands.
You know what I'm saying? So I was pretty good capital wise, but people that are coming into the industry, especially people of color, man, access to capital, the lack of banking that we could do, really makes it very difficult. When I try to go get money now from an institution that says that they are loaning to cannabis businesses, the first thing they want to ask me, we need 2-3 years of your tax return and your bank statements. Bank statements?
Nigga, I sell weed, nigga.
When have we ever been able to bank in the cannabis industry? And you asking me for 3 years of bank statements? Ain't none of that gonna reflect the money that I done made.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the tax return, shoot, we just became legal in 2017. How many tax returns you want?
Now, I want pardon me for taking it somewhere else. And it's for me as a cannabis enthusiast, and an LA, historian. It kind of messed me up. You say you just got legal in 2016, yet you had your first dispensary in 2004.
Yeah. So what I say is we were always legal for medical purposes in 1996, 23 years ago. And we sold weed 23 years ago for medical purposes. But when I say legal in a sense, because people don't understand that California been legal 23 years. They only think because we became recreational in 2017 that's when we became legal. No, we became legal way before that. But there have been some different dynamics that government recognizes from 2017 to present day on a greater scale for California. But the laws still haven't changed banking wise for us, and they haven't changed in other areas for us to do business like a normal business, even though we're taxed a hell of a lot more than the average business.
Speaking of the law, you've seen your share of it, from, again, obviously being arrested, being, incarcerated, and, inside of these court buildings and, municipal buildings. There have been a lot of steps being made in regards to cannabis reform.
Yes.
And one thing I'm hearing about, and I want to know more about, can you tell me about it, is what is Proposition 64?
So Proposition 64 is AUMA. AUMA being AUMA, Adult Use of Marijuana Act. That is what Prop 64, the true language, the title of Prop 64, Adult Use of Marijuana Act. So what that was passed in 2000, I believe, 17, to legalize cannabis. It was a voter initiative that passed it, like I think 60-something%, passed in the state of California, which allows us to sell cannabis for adult use, not medical, just medical purposes, but for adult use. So you and any other adult can now smoke weed and purchase weed in California legally and freely.
So that's what Prop 60. So that's what Prop 64 does. So what does it? So it's been a bunch of brothers that went to jail, Virg.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of brothers that's still doing time for cannabis, and now they got this quote unquote Prop 64, which allows us to freely enjoy weed on a recreation level. What does Prop 64 do for those people who have already been convicted doing time or unjustly,
So Prop 64 is supposed to expunge records of convictions, small possessions of cannabis, It is very limited in its scope of what it can do as far as expungement, and it's on a case, and I have to say, from watching it play out, it's been a case by case situation. It wasn't a blanket expungement like they tried to make it seem like.
So is it different than what the Los Angeles District Attorney is proposing?
Oh, Gascon? Oh, very different. He's talking about blanketing the whole situation, whether it was sales, whether it was transportation, whether it's transportation for sales, whether it's distribution, it don't matter. He wants to blanket the whole, which to me Prop 64 should have done, and it should have immediately, once it passed on the sunset, should immediately affected everybody.
So if you got cracked for weed in the past in LA County, our district attorney is proposing, we're gonna wipe all that clean.
Absolutely.
Wow. Is it a certain retroactive date that it, or is it anybody alive?
We are still waiting on that to come about, because those are to be worked out. But just the fact that that is now something that has been presented and is live, and we know with Gascon being in office that he's going to make sure that happens, because he's been very aggressive on reforms, and we understand. And then you even had the sheriff come out and speak about it. The LA County top cop, he comes out to speak about it, and understands that it affects communities of Black and brown.
And thinking about that right now, you mentioned how the top cop comes out, and the first thing, I cringed. My stomach kind of, because I felt like, again, coming from the type of areas we come from, there's so much distrust between the community and the cops. How do you navigate that distrust? And I'm sure you have, but you have to show a certain amount of faith now, a certain amount of faith in government, being a legitimate businessman now.
Yes.
How do you navigate that?
It's a fine line of navigation. That's the reason why when we talked about why I got involved in activism, so I could affect change policy-wise. So we could complain and talk about things all day, but if we don't change them through the law, then it's still going to be the same old thing that we going to keep getting over and over again. Once you change the law, then now it's forced to change. So when we hear and you see the top cop come out speaking in support of it, we want the law to change, because when the law changes, he is here to do what? He is here to protect and enforce the law. If the law say, I'm legal holding this cannabis, then the enforcement part is that you can't touch me, right? Because now you got to uphold the law. You were here to protect and serve and uphold the law. Now we know a lot of them don't do that out there. And so there's still a lot of mistrust. But when we start moving in this direction, it begins to now make that a low priority on officers and police that are on patrols eyesight list. Hence why we got a lot of unregulated shops out there that are still open. We got people that are still dealing weed on the streets. Why? Because now it has become a low to no priority. You see what I'm saying? Smoke yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. Virgil, again, you got such a fascinating story. That's a word I'll probably overuse during this whole segment, but you got such a fascinating story. Again, coming from, Compton, I know where you come from. I know the type of place that is. And to go from, I'll say, poverty to prestige. I mean, it's been an amazing journey for you so far. Again, you've had your share of dark moments, prison in particular. Was there ever a time where you found yourself near your breaking point where you felt like, okay, I'm in prison, fuck this, I can't do this no more? Or did it just fire you up more, like, when I get out, I'm gonna go harder?
Yeah. That one. It never broke me. I stayed mentally strong and focused. Any cat that did time with me or walked past me in prison always knew what I stood for. from day one, and I never backed up off of that. Before I went to jail, I knew I was doing the right thing. When I got out of jail, I was going to continue to do the right thing. Matter of fact, I went to jail, I had unfinished business, so I couldn't wait. I said the only thing I told the cat in prison, the only thing holding me back from doing what I gotta do is that door right there. Soon as they crack that door for me, once again it's on. And there was work that I needed to finish. I saw that 6 years I sat in federal prison, I saw the industry progress, but didn't progress anywhere. If you could understand what I mean by that. In other words, I watched a lot of people come into the industry. Matter of fact, when I was in federal prison, there was no such thing as cookies. Real talk. The shop cookies, the strain cookies,
the prominent cannabis label.
Yeah, there was no such thing as cookies now you keep in mind, I got cracked in 08, 09, somewhere around there. I did 6 years, so you could do the math. I started hearing cookies on my way out of prison. When my time started getting short, maybe my last year or two, I heard about the strain cookies, not the shop. The strain cookies was now being popularized.
It started as a strain, yes, absolutely. Girl Scout cookies.
Girl Scout cookies, and a cat from the Bay Area that I was doing time with kept talking about this cookies, the Girl Scout cookies. And I was like, yeah, and I hear, you've been in the industry as long as I have, you hear about all the strains that come and go. It just then became a shop, formulated into a shop and then into a brand, like it has because the evolution of the industry. Never heard of MedMan, until I actually came home. Actually, MedMan hadn't even been nothing until I came home. So I got out in 14, 15, somewhere around there. MedMan was just now getting started.
Again, man, sound like to me, man, if you don't remember none of them guys in the trenches, again, when you're running from camp and met, and from, again, that's what I meant. That's what I mean as far as like a lot of people capitalize, on the hard work that was taken. Again, that's no strike to anybody. Again, our forefathers definitely paved the way for us to do everything we do. As a comedian, as an actor, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Red Fox, they paved the way for me. However, I don't think enough homage is paid to the people that paved the way.
Nah, they don't. They don't even look back. I guarantee you, those people that are in these known shops don't even know any of the players that really made it possible for them to roam freely as they do, to operate freely as they do, to create brands and so on as freely as they do. A lot of people don't even know about the company Bliss or Beyond Bomb or a lot of these companies, Tainted and Bliss. A lot of them don't even know about Tainted and Bliss. Like, who? Tainted Bliss. These were edible companies that were out way before any of these other edible companies. They got cracked by the feds too because they had all these novelty edibles that look like regular candy bars, like Reefies. It was called Reefies instead of Reese's.
I want to try one. I want to try one.
Matter of fact, they even had an OG Kush bar that I used to sell off the hook. That was Be Real hooked up with these companies and made a Be Real OG Kush bar. And all it was like a granola bar infused with cannabis. They had ice cream. They had all kind of stuff. But these is real players that made it possible for all of these edible companies to exist now. And these cats got cracked by the feds. A lot of them didn't have to go in and do the time. They ended up, but they got their lives shaken up behind it.
Absolutely.
Some of them did do a few little months in federal prison. But there are a lot of people out there, like I say, that have paved the way and have been through certain things. But I guarantee you none of these cats know the history of that. My thing is I just want to make sure the history is told properly so that when a lot of these companies are out navigating, I would like for you to know how they are able to navigate like they do. Who had multiple shops back in the day? So you had me, who had 6 shops. You had the pharmacy who had 3 shops. We were one of the only few companies back then that had multiple locations, way before any of these other shops even did multiple locations. So when you talk about owners that own 3 and 4 retail shops, there were some players out there that these cats got that from.
Which made me think about something, man. Being a melanated people, how important is it that you see representation of melanated people in this industry?
I think it's very important for me because even though I was one of the only blacks, back then I was the only black operator that was operating back then until some other people came in. You had Gold, you had Kathy Smith, you had Basil, you had a couple other players, Sean, you had another brother in the valley, David. You had a couple of other blacks that came into the industry, and I was proud to see more black people come in. But we talking, what, 5 or 6 of them, and a few of them ain't even in the industry to this day. So now that we have presently, as owners and operators, probably about 5 of us, man. Actually, so I always tried to represent properly for us. That's why I made sure I kept my nose clean in the industry and I did the right thing. So that way I wouldn't misrepresent us in the cannabis industry.
Man, look, you did the right thing all the way around, because again, to touch on what we mentioned earlier, from the streets to the boardroom, you respect it all over, because again, you've never been afraid to get your hands dirty and be there. So every part or every portion of the cannabis industry you've touched, and you can generally tell a motherfucker, I know what I'm talking about.
So yeah, I'm just now harvesting the CC, the world's famous CCOG. So y'all gonna get a taste of it.
I gotta get a taste of it.
Gotta get a taste of it.
I
Hey
gotta
man,
get a taste of that shit.
Hey, let me tell you, it is good. So I grew. Been down there through some runs of manufacturing of oil. I do my own manufacturing. I make a nice tea, California cannabis, all organic cannabis infused, sun brewed tea.
So nice.
There's a lot of things that I do. I'm on the retail floor. I did distribution. Yeah, I've even went and delivered some product to somebody. Even as an owner, let me tell real talk. Let me just throw this out. I was at the Melrose shop and somebody called and asked for a delivery. And since I was on my way to my Crenshaw location and the address was on the way, I went and dropped off a delivery to a regular person, the owner of 3 locations in the city of Los Angeles. They say, man, that's beneath you. I went and dropped off to a customer. Customer didn't know who I was or anything or what I was about. But see, that's the type of dude I am. I'm not above nobody in no form or fashion. I get down and do the same thing my employees do.
Hey Virgil, what do you want for the cannabis industry? What do you want for the industry as a whole?
I would love to see real players in the industry make it and become very successful, that they could, create their own space, brands, cultivation. I would love to see them have generational wealth. I would just love to see people successful. Keep in mind that all the work and the activism work that we did that because we wanted to see this industry successful. We wanted to see these companies come in and do well. The ones that you see out there that are doing well. That was the reason we fought so hard. What I do like to see every once in a while is that they do, as they sitting there hyping up their brand and doing all that they doing the same way that I do, at least pay homage to those that paved the way for you, like I do with the Jack Herreras, the Eddie Lefts, the Ed Rosenthal. I give them their proper dues, because without them, we wouldn't have got where we are today.
Absolutely. Man, you got such a rich history. I'm talking about so much. I told you earlier, man, you need to fucking write a movie or a book or something. It's so much rich history, too much for us to cover on this live or these memory cards right here. But trust and believe, we'll be back.
Yes, sir.
Next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday. Stay tuned next Tuesday for Tokin Tuesday. This was our first kickoff. The next one, we're going to be live and in effect, uncut, everything on point. We just wanted to give you a taste.
Yeah, we want you to light your blunts on the campfire because we're going to have stories from Virgil, man. One of the most influential yet unknown and unheard of figures in the cannabis game, man. Stay tuned, more Tokin Tuesday. Hey, I'm Slink Johnson. We right here, Tokin Tuesday with Virgil Grant.
Peace.
And we smoking you. Until next week, baby.
Cut.
Go see,